I want to welcome all of you who are here with us today. This is a very exciting innovation forum, and we're really excited to hear from our guest speaker. I wanted to do a brief introduction to CAMPS because we've got several people who are not quite as familiar. You see the different kind of programs that we have. Everything we do is really based on improving the future of manufacturing, making it better, more profitable, making it more accessible, helping manufacturers. For instance, one of the benefits that we have is our health trust benefits. This program actually offers a lot of savings to manufacturers. So we have manufacturers that are saving tens of thousands of dollars a year and getting better health benefits for their employees. We work with an excellent company, and it's something that we encourage you, if you haven't already checked into it, it's something that you can find on our website, which is down on the right-hand side of the screen. It's a place where you can get a free quote. You can see the savings for yourself. And we're excited to tell you about our new Manufacturing Accelerator program, and that's also on our website. You can take a look at that. This is an opportunity to give manufacturers resources, access to resources. Plus, you'll see that we're visiting in person manufacturers in 7 different cities throughout the state 3 times a year. And the purpose is to get us connected, to share the resources that will help with revenue, that will help with funding, and will help with the type of support that manufacturers need to keep moving forward. And a program that we are very excited about is our Build It WA job board. And of course, you'll see this on the website. We've been working with companies to help them find employees over the last couple of years with this program. We've helped our manufacturers in the CAMPS community, and this is a free program to them, find over 600 employees. Our program puts the job board up, and we advertise on Facebook to people in the greater Puget Sound area that are likely to have worked in manufacturing or know something about manufacturing. But as a result, we are helping our manufacturers find the workforce that they need. And we are working on other workforce issues. Norman, if you go to the next slide, I'm always available, somebody you can reach out to and talk to about your manufacturing needs. Would love to have you join our manufacturing community. And with that, I will just introduce you to Norman Yu, who is He's the Director of Innovation at Kosher Consulting and Engineering. And Norman has just been excellent at helping lead this innovation forum. And Norman, I'll turn the time over to you to introduce our speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Kirk, and welcome everyone. Good morning. So here we are, our April Innovation Forum meeting. And I believe we have quite a few folks who are joining us for the first time. So just a bit of background. The Innovation Forum within CAMPS is really a collaborative, interactive forum geared towards anything and everything innovation. Obviously, there is a lot that is encompassed within the word innovation. So we really pride ourselves in providing an outlet where we can discuss a broad range of topics, relevant topics for small and mid-sized manufacturers. And for today's topic, we are very excited to be joined by Gary Moe, the President and CEO of ID Integration. And if you saw the flyer that was circulating, you may know that today's topic will revolve around RFID technology. And RFIDs is not new. They've been around for a while, and ID Integration is really a trailblazer and pioneer within that space. And they are doing some very exciting, cutting-edge stuff around RFID technology. So I'm very excited, and I hope you are as well. And without any further ado, I will hand it over to Gary Moe.
Great, thank you, Norman. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, great. Mo, I'm a president, CEO, one of the co-founders of ID Integration, and we're pretty excited. We just actually just celebrated our 25th year in business, and our history, we're based out of the Seattle, Washington. Our office is actually in Mukilteo. Early on, we were down in Kent area for a while, and like I mentioned, we have a lot of history in asset tracking, part identification using RFID, barcoding, direct part marking. I mentioned early on when we were starting, one of our first kind of projects and of new innovative technology at the time was the 2-dimensional data matrix code. And our company, we actually started off as manufacturers representatives up here in the state of Washington and the Pacific Northwest. One of the products we were selling is laser engraving equipment. And a company we were working with out of Orlando, Florida was was working on a project with NASA, and we were down there for training, and we saw them laser etch this two-dimensional like checkerboard pattern on metal. And they were working with NASA as a way to track the ceramic tiles on the space shuttle with a laser. So we got excited about that, introduced that technology to Boeing, and did a lot of work with laser etching on small tooling. And kind of out of that got us into the parts tracking at various Boeing facilities around the area. And one of the challenges was tracking stringers and spars out of Frederickson and Auburn. And that was when Boeing was building the 777 airplane at the time. And they had a freighter version and a commercial version. The freighter version, the structural parts were maybe a 16th or a little bit larger in size, but they were having a problem tagging it with the wrong part number and having escapes when it went up to Everett. So we did a project of actually putting a passive microchip that they put into PETs. And we put it in an ultra high weight molecular plastic rivet, attached it to parts. Actually worked great. And we integrated it to an inkjet marking system. But like I mentioned, the technology at the time, the RFID reader had about an 18-inch antenna on the handheld reader, and it cost $5,000. But that was our first, 1999 was our first RFID project. Out of that, we were introduced to the Boeing. Seattle people introduced us to the Chinook helicopter group in Philadelphia. They had a fleet grounding because they had some bad material on some of the transmission parts, but they had no configuration management. They didn't know what bad serial number was on what tail number. So the Army had to ground the whole fleet of Chinook helicopters, 400 plus helicopters, and look for all the bad material. So we started working with them on a way of putting these two-dimensional barcodes on flyable Chinook helicopter parts, and it became the standard within Department of Defense. If there's manufacturers on and you do work with the Department of Defense, you've probably heard of the IUID, Item Unique Identification Policy. It requires you to put a unique two-dimensional barcode on military parts. So we got heavily involved in that, working with Boeing, but you can see some of our customers here. We work with Honeywell and Northrop Grumman and Lockheed and the Boeing programs in the Army. We have been involved. Boeing wanted to put RFID on flyable airplane parts, and that goes back to the mid to late 2000s. And the 787 was the first airplane they were going to put RFID on flyable parts, and they wanted high memory RFID and just couldn't. The chip and technology wasn't ready. They are working on that today, and we work with a lot of the aerospace suppliers, the Honeywells and BAE and Collins Aerospace, that have those kind of requirements. That technology was okay, and we had some challenges. We didn't get long read ranges. It wasn't that practical for suppliers to use that technology on their shop floor. You had a mandate from Boeing and Airbus to put these RFID tags on your parts, but we were only getting 12 to 18 inches of read range. So it wasn't that practical to set up RFID antennas and readers on the shop floor. One thing I guess that makes us unique is we are hardware, software, technology agnostic. We're not exclusive to just one solution. And we consider ourselves a systems integrator, which means we provide our customers a full turnkey solution for the upfront consulting, site survey, discovery, system design on a project, up to creating the bill of materials, purchasing the equipment, and then installing it and training in a manufacturer's facility. We're going to go through a little bit of the technology, and we're focused on RFID, and I'll go a little bit into, for maybe some that aren't really aware. I've got a few slides. I don't want to overwhelm you with PowerPoint slides, and I definitely want to feel free to jump in if there's questions too, and we can make this interactive. One key point I just want to make right off the bat is we've been doing RFID and involved in this technology for 25 years. And I would say especially within the last probably 3 to 4 years, we've seen an incredible jump in performance, especially with passive RFID. And when I talk about passive versus active, passive RFID is we have now labels, RFID labels that can be printed through a Honeywell or Zebra RFID printer where the chip and antenna is embedded into the label, which came out probably 6, 7 years ago, very innovative at the time. But the read ranges that we're getting now out of these passive RFID is really continues to get better and better. And I just saw an article, I think a couple of weeks ago, last year in 2023, there was over 43 billion passive RFID chips manufactured globally. And in the past, we also work with active RFID. These are bigger tags that have batteries in them. You can get longer read ranges up to 100 feet, but the infrastructure cost is a lot higher. You have to replace batteries, more costly, where the tags can cost $20 to $50 a tag, versus we do have RFID tags that in higher volume that we can put on packaging down into the 5 cents now for passive RFID, up to on metal tags that might be a few dollars each, but definitely much less expensive than some of the active. One of our projects that we have here, we've actually applied over 140,000 assets or RFID labels at VA hospitals now on medical equipment and other hospitals. I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, when we first started tagging on certain parts where we were getting, say, 1 to 2 feet, with some of the newer chips and antennas and labels, we're getting 5 to 6 feet, up to 20 feet on some of the passive technology. So it's been a real great improvement. A lot of benefits that we can go over. This was just specific to hospitals, and we do also work in healthcare, manufacturing, and also aerospace and military. I've got a few slides just to maybe do a primer on RFID. It's kind of high level of people hear the acronym and our radio frequency identification, but really what RFID technology is, it uses radio frequency waves to transfer data between a reader and movable or stationary items for tracking. And that could be anything in your facility, work order tracking, actual parts, tooling, assets within a hospital, within a laboratory, chemicals, people. And it integrates quite a few different technologies, from the different type of tags to readers, different sensors now that we're working on. And I know the Innovation Forum, you've been talking about Internet of Things and IoT and tracking items, RFID, and especially passive as part of that. And I'll get into this, you also hear AIDC, automatic identification and data capture, auto ID technology. What any manufacturer wants to do, or any organization, you want to eliminate human intervention as much as possible. A lot of people are familiar with barcode scanners, and you still need to have, that's better than obviously manually typing in information using a barcode scanner and a keyboard wedge and scanning that into your shop floor software, your ERP system. But RFID even takes that away now, where it's automatically reading from a few feet up to maybe 50, 60 feet away, and automatically updating that into your software. Now, I do want to, and we'll make reference to this, for a lot of companies, it seems simple. Okay, that makes sense. I've got a reader, I've got an antenna set up in my work cell, at my dock doors, at entry points, exit points of my facility and my manufacturing line. When your company and maybe your software developers, they're used to that one scan. You scan a barcode. With RFID, the fixed readers and antennas, they have the capability to have 1,000 reads per second. It's really a paradigm shift that we have to many times get through with the software and the IT team. It's now we're doing keyboard wedge, we're scanning one item at a time, and now we just have this fire hose of data flowing into their software. And so that's where we have software packages that kind of filter that out. I heard someone talking about the analogy of RFID data now and IoT and all this sensor data that's coming is available now to manufacturers. It's like that crude oil. We're pumping this crude oil out of the ground, but we got to go into the refinery. We got to refine it, and before we can put that into our engine. So it's that some companies get a little overwhelmed and can be a little challenged by that in projects. And just here's the idea of the RFID in a bird's eye view. We have the labels, which again now what's really exciting is we have basically asset paper, polyester type labels that have that little RFID chip, that little grain of sand along with the antenna integrated into the label. So we can use standard, just like in your shipping department, RFID enabled printers now that can integrate on your back end to your software, to your ERP and shop floor system to automatically print a human readable, a barcode on a label, but also now encode the RFID chip with a unique ID. We have readers, we have printers, antennas, we have handheld readers that can be on Bluetooth, variety of solutions. In my opinion, what we do, it's almost secondhand now of getting the right label, setting all that up, printing, setting up readers, antennas, and the manufacturing line, getting your software, getting this approved to be on your network and is the challenge. And I'm sure for a lot of us that are into innovation, obviously with cybersecurity these days, with network requirements, our biggest challenge as a systems integrator and is working through the cybersecurity team, the IT teams. We have software that can be installed on a company server on-premise mode. More and more, we're moving over to cloud, but a lot of companies still will not allow us. They don't want to use cloud. Maybe that will install an on-premise asset management type software on their internal cloud that they manage. So that becomes a challenge. We don't see that going away. And again, we have that physical and the IT, and again, the people aspect too, the training, making it easy for people to use and operate, and showing return on investment. I know for a lot of you, that can be a challenge sometimes is proving your management. You're going in for an approval on a project and everybody wants to know what my ROI is, right? So that we work in there, but there's a lot of intangibles of how much savings is there in the time your people spend looking for misplaced equipment. You have calibrated tooling that you need for a specific manufacturing operation, and you're looking all over your plant and facility for it. In a hospital environment or a laboratory, a pharmaceutical or a government lab, these are very high value research scientists that are looking around labs that are spending an hour to 2 hours of their time per week. You multiply that out, and then the delays and the ROI can get pretty big very quickly. Sometimes it's hard to quantify safety. But I mentioned also, we see in a lot of cases, in a lot of applications, sometimes a hybrid type technologies. Barcode is still great in certain environments where you want someone to still scan a work order or barcode, or you're picking and placing things. So most of the solutions we sell, the readers, the handheld readers, will still work with barcode. where we'll put a barcode on the label. So it's got to fit the use case. We have optical character recognition, mag stripe, biometrics, voice recognition is coming out there. You've probably had on some of the augmented reality, virtual reality headsets now that workers are using that are tying in with voice recognition. So a lot of new innovation in manufacturing, and again, just helping the workers to be more efficient. And with the turnover of people, younger workers coming in to the workplace, it's really important to invest for a company to invest in this new, automated identification technologies. We went over this a little bit. There's passive. There's one of the. We're going to see this in the future. We're still a little bit early on, but you may hear of it. They're working on ways to do energy harvesting, pulling out energy out of Wi-Fi in the air and bringing it into an antenna to power chips to get longer read range from RFIDs. We see this semi-passive. That's exciting technology. Again, it's the way the passive tags actually work is I have my chip and antenna in a label or into a hardened tag. It's passive, so it's not transmitting or transferring information. But I bring my reader out with an antenna, I pull the trigger, it shoots out RF energy out of the antenna in the reader, and it gets absorbed in the label, and then the chip transfers that data back. So it's all based on that power, the sensitivity of the chip and the antenna. But if we could power up the chip more by harvesting energy, we could get longer read ranges and better performance. And we're probably a few years away from that, realistically. The active tags that have batteries in them. And I would say probably applications that probably 5 years ago, we would have said, hey, we have to do active, we got to have battery operated tags, are now easily being able to be done with passive RFID technology. And again, benefits of a lower cost label that can be printed through a thermal transfer printer on your shop floor, just can become your asset label now is a big benefit. We have different frequencies. You'll hear low frequency. HF frequency is like your security badges, the 13 megahertz range for access control to your building. What we're typically, when we're talking passive RFID, it's called UHF, ultra high frequency, but we're in about the 900 megahertz band in that range. It is allocated frequency band by the FCC, so we're not typically getting interference in that frequency range. One thing is that we like is it's a global standard. So any reader, any label within that UHF, there's RAIN as an organization that's standardized, GS1, various standard organizations. So it's open, whereas active RFID is typically proprietary to one manufacturer. We see labels, wristbands, companies now are, I think Ingersoll Rand and maybe Fluke, and I've seen them embedding RFID tags into the enclosures or into the boards, into their products. Now we're seeing more and more of that. And I think you mentioned it, Norman, RFID is not new. It's been out there quite a long time. The patents were done in the 50s, the electronic article surveillance, you see those little portals up in the stores that you go through Target for theft. That goes back to the mid-60s, and animal tracking in a rail car, going through the 520 and the 405, you see the readers mounted up and you got your good to go tag on your car. That's all radio frequency. Probably one of the biggest drivers of that 43 billion RFID chips that's happening is really driven through retail. If you get a Nike shirt or shoes or clothing items, you probably have an RFID or chip and antenna built into your label. Walmart this past year has a mandate out for all their suppliers. I think I heard Walmart's probably going to be, and their suppliers are going to be using probably close to 5 billion RFID labels, tracking items in the store. And it's really was driven by inventory accuracy. As we see more and more stores now are becoming almost distribution centers, right? Where it's important, you're out at the store at Macy's and you want to know, I want this SKU, but I need it in a large. You need to be able to find that, or if it's in another store, and have good inventory accuracy. So that's what's really been driving that. The Department of Defense on military shipping labels has been requiring RFID. A lot of different applications in manufacturing, where camps, where our members are really looking at. There's a lot of applications for tracking your work orders on the shop floor, putting an RFID label on your work order and setting up readers to track that flow. That's easy. If you're just putting a bigger paper label on your paperwork on a work order, you can get some really good read ranges. Tooling is a big issue, especially calibrated tooling. And we have tags that we can mount in various sizes and on tools now. Sometimes if we try to put a small tag on a small tool, the read range may only be a few feet. It depends. So we have to look at that use case. If you want to read a whole bag full of tools going through a doorway, may not get, it's not a perfect technology in some cases. Metal is, RF energy reflects off of metal. Liquid, it absorbs. So anything with metal or liquid really needs to be looked at. But tooling is a great application. There is a company here local that does a lot of military and space work that we're looking at to provide calibrated tool tracking across their facility. So we'd actually be installing these readers up in their ceiling panels and antennas throughout their facility. So they'll be able to see pretty much real-time movement of calibrated tooling, and we'll be able to check. So at any time they've got a manufacturing operation, they'll be able to go to the software, look for that tool and see where its current location is so they can go get it. They also, you can get some good data from watching flow on your shop floor, movement of work orders from work cell to work cell. So there's a lot of data that you can get with good location tracking. Shipping and receiving is a great application. Warehouses. We have couple customers that we're looking at of actually putting RFID readers and antennas on forklifts for tracking items and using that with forklifts. There's actually a way to embed passive RFID tags, cut it into your concrete, and each spaced out properly where the forklift can read its location back using passive RFID technology versus active, and then picking up items and tracking that all back. Pharmaceutical healthcare is huge benefits in the hospitals of tracking hospital assets and movement. See just every day now are hotel keys, that's all RFID, cashless payments now. We have Bluetooth and HF RFID technology in our smartphones now for cashless. I know the new iPhone is looking, I think they have now ultra wideband technology built in for tracking and in phones. So the mobile phones and mobile apps has really opened up a lot of making the experience better for the users, being able to use this technology. Document management, they use these in amusement parks. I'll just go through a couple of these, just a few. This was an application just tracking various assets and oil drilling platforms and locating items and movement and being used in that. The Department of Defense and US Transcom, it has fully invested in RFID for tracking. You can see that picture on the bottom. Those are like dock door portals. When shipments come in through the dock door on a forklift, these readers will read it. It's pretty amazing. The clothing and retailers that have big warehouses have these dock door readers, and they're able to read a whole pallet of, say, 500 items in a pallet on a forklift going 5 miles an hour through a door. The technology is getting that good now. As long as there's not a lot of metal or liquid. That's for clothing is definitely much easier because there's no metal. Manufacturing takes a little more work on that. Textile industries using that. There's also applications for active tags that you can get like wayfinding on the shop floor, and tracking visitors in labs. But we have some applications now where because of that issue for the research scientists that are wasting 1 to 2 hours a week looking for misplaced chemicals and even attachments for tooling for doing their scientific experiments, where the return on investment is excellent for putting RFID labels on all the consumable chemicals and solvents. We have these, in some cases, we have what you can call a flag tag. It kind of sticks on a part, but then it flags out and you can get good read ranges on that. But in one of the labs, we're going to be setting up antennas at every single room and in their storage rooms. So they'll be able to track all the chemicals moving around a research lab that they'll be able to find in real time. And I might mention, this is on the extreme, but we have RFID labels that can go down to minus 80 degrees Celsius for ultra low temp freezers for samples and specimens now on test tubes and vials. And the adhesive will even, you're able to apply the label at minus 80 in a dry ice bag, which is pretty incredible, right? And then you can wrap it around, and the read ranges aren't great, but we have some storage facilities where they're storing these samples, maybe COVID, smallpox, all these different biohazard, and they have to do an inventory on them. And now we're able to go into pull out an item and scan all the items in a tray, all the test tubes and vial with RFID. That's a kind of a unique application. Again, benefits, getting good data, eliminating human intervention, getting data in real time, and reducing data collection time. Like government and some, I know a lot of manufacturing companies, you have to do periodic, maybe yearly or annual audits. I know maybe your CFO says, hey, we need to do a 20% asset check. So that takes a long time. And in the government, they have to do 100% wall-to-wall audit. And so they have to go through with barcode scanners, and say in military hospitals, it could take 8 to 10 minutes in a room when you have barcode labels on the back of monitors and computers and equipment, and you physically have to touch it. And with RFID, we go in the room with a reader, RFID handheld, and just go through that room. We could be done in less than a minute and scan and do the auditing. So that's a big benefit that reduces a lot of cost of labor. And that's all my slides that I just wanted to just share high level, and definitely open to some questions. I was talking with Norman and Kirk last week, and they were asking me, just maybe to kick it off, as well, does this make sense for a small manufacturer or a medium size? And I've been thinking about that, and it's from our standpoint as a systems integrator, I think a good way to get going is for any company should be looking at this technology. And we do have demo kits, you can get labels to put on your parts. We have demo apps that can go on a reader, and you can test that out. It's the biggest challenge, like I mentioned, is the IT, the cybersecurity, it takes a lot of our efforts from an upfront kind of, we would call it non-recurring engineering work, or evangelizing education, there's a lot of upfront work that we have to do. So there's a lot of benefits, and I would say depending on the size of your project, that upfront work is same whether it's a $50,000 to $100,000 to a $500,000 to a $5 million project sometimes. So it's got to make sense. I think there are some good systems integrator. I would say if you're looking at this technology, it's important to work with knowledgeable people that have experience, especially in manufacturing when we're talking about metal. And there's companies out there that have experience in retail that I work with, Macy's or Target or Amazon, and this is a whole different environment when we start walking into your shop floor and seeing metal and equipment and liquids and things like that. But again, the technology has gotten so much better. I want to say a few years ago when we were setting up readers and antennas, we'd have to, you can adjust the power from 100%. We would almost have to max out our antenna power. But now it's the opposite with the quality of the new chips and antennas. Sometimes I don't want to set up a reader in an area that's reading it into the next work cell. So the technology is getting so much better. Now we're going the opposite. When we go out on site and we tune the readers and antennas for your work cells in your areas, it's almost like we're having to back off now. But that's great. That's a good problem to have. And it's only going to keep getting better and better. We have a company in our area in Pinge in Seattle, which is one of the leaders. They make very good RFID chips and some readers, and there's other manufacturers around the world. So it seems like there's a lot of competition now, which is good for us. That 43 billion chips, they're always trying to one up each other as a manufacturer to get better sensitivity, read range, performance. And it's really driven by the retail group. But from the industrial manufacturing and healthcare side, we're benefiting because it's almost like every 6 to 8 months we get a new chip and RFID label, and whoa, we went from 1 to 2 feet on an IV pump in a hospital to 5 or 6 feet, like 3 times better just overnight with a new label. It looks the same, but it's a new chip and antenna. So we're going to continue to see that. It's very exciting. I know we got a little more time, right, Norman? We can have some questions or more discussion. So
there actually was one that came in chat a while back, Gary, and you alluded to it during your presentation. Andrea had a question just specifically around the passive technology and the label size. Now, how small can those labels get?
Good question. On the larger size, we can get them into the shipping label size, like a 4x6 or 4x2. There's small labels now for some of the pharmaceutical and that are probably maybe 1 inch to 1/2 inch. We have a label that's 1.75 by 0.75 that gives excellent read range. I would say typically the smaller the label, the smaller the antenna, so the read range isn't going to be as great. Again, they keep pushing the envelope on that. On some of the flag tags, we can get a little small if we can put the label off the surface. So I might mention also, there's certain times, obviously, you have some parts that aren't a label material, whether it's a synthetic or a paper isn't going to work. But there's a lot of options out there now for extreme environment tags where we have different sized RFID tags that are housed in a real hard plastic enclosure. We have tags that can make it through 1,000 autoclave cycles. We can epoxy them onto medical devices. We did a project with the government where we have these little tags that are about half the size of a toothpick. And we tagged 5,000 weapons in an armory at an Air Force base. At the end of every shift, they have to do 100% inventory on 5,000 weapons. by putting that little small tag and epoxying it onto, these were training weapons, but they now were able to do, they just went up to the racks and went like that, instead of technically they're supposed to grab and look at serial numbers. I remember the Air Force person that was managing the armory, I think he gave our guy a hug when we left the site. He said, "You don't believe, you can't understand how many hours you just saved of my life, and that I can go home on time and see my wife for dinner." Just the real stuff.
Yeah, huge impact, especially for those that wear the uniform. Absolutely. Time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more
Time,
valuable than
yeah.
time with loved ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We had another question come through, also from Andrea. So Andrea works for a laser manufacturing company. They manufacture RF CO2 lasers. And her question is, how would that interfere with RFID frequency, if at all? And Andrea can feel free to chime in and provide more detail if you'd like, but anything that you've seen from your experience, Gary, with laser manufacturing?
No, we haven't seen any in the passive range in the 900 megahertz. Electromagnets, ultrasonic, very old ultrasonic welders. We've seen some weird noise in that realm. But that's an important, when we go out on site and work with a customer, it's important that you do the proper site survey. We have a spectrum analyzer that we walk through the facility to see if we're going to get any energy or frequencies in that 900 megahertz range. So we don't take that for granted. There is some older facilities and things, but we haven't seen that with laser etching.
Perfect. And then we have another question from Anne. So have you seen customers shift from metal shelving to HDPE so they can use RFID tags and readers?
Yes, good point. We have seen that where we have because RF, again, it'll reflect off of metal. So plastic shelving, glass shelving, where RF can go through that. I might say it's interesting. We've done some work where we've tagged hazardous chemicals that are in the chemical lock boxes in your manufacturing floor. Sometimes metal actually helps. It acts like a Faraday cage. You'll open up the reader and it just reflects within an enclosure. But in general, I would say the plastic shelving, and we have seen people ask and go more to plastic, I would say.
So while folks are thinking up questions, I have just a general one, Gary. Obviously, you've been involved with this industry for many years. It ebbs and flows like any industry. Where do you think the next major shift will come with RFID technology in the coming years and decades?
I think next week we're going to be going to this. They have this RFID journal live conference. It's probably been going almost 20 years. And every year they go, okay, it's Moore's Law. We're going to hit the curve. So there's been unfortunately, a lot of hype for RFID. I think starting Walmart made that claim, almost 20 years ago now, 15 to 20 years ago, that we're going to be able to put RFID in on the groceries and we'll automatically read everything. They forgot to talk to the engineers, right? About metal and liquids. But I think we truly are in a shift now from like retail to utilizing especially passive RFID in manufacturing environments, in healthcare, just because of the improvement of the technology. RFIDs worked well in retail and on clothing and non-metal and maybe tracking work orders. But I truly see that shift happening now with new form factors of readers that can work with smartphones. We have these RFID sleds. The RFID readers now can run off a power over Ethernet cable, so you don't have to run special power and Ethernet. That's made the integration a lot easier. Most of the readers now realize this whole Internet of Things, and there's different ways through MQTT kind of communication, the whole IoT kind of communication network. The readers can integrate directly. I think that's going to, I see the shift happening right now of applications and customers just within the last couple of years that I wouldn't have felt good. I turned away a lot of jobs for our company because I care about my name recognition, reputation, and I want to make sure that I have happy customers, and we can't afford to take their money, and we try to explain the limitations and expectations, but now we're pretty excited about the technology.
Yeah, definitely very exciting times. Another question, Gary, you spoke a bit about system integration. Roger has a question around asset management technology. Anything out there that complements RFIDs from the perspective of asset management, such as visual?
Yeah, we are seeing in some cases camera and vision systems now. I think they have a place in certain applications. I have seen, yeah, where vision can be brought into software packages now. I think if you're a software vendor, you're looking at all kinds of sensor inputs, right? I think that technology continues to improve, and definitely that could be part of a total solution that you need to look at. Again, companies have been doing barcodes forever. It's not, don't just cancel and get rid of all your barcodes. There's a lot of good uses for that. And even active technology in certain cases where if you have a big open space or a hangar, and there are cases where active makes sense because of the long ranges, and they have mesh network and way different. And that's, as a systems integrator, I think, not being exclusive or working for just one company, one technology. When we go out and consult and work with our customers, we look at all that. And give the pros and cons of what makes sense, and cost, budget's important, and ease of use for your people and on the shop floor, and the training and all that.
Any other questions from the audience?
I would.
I have a piggyback question on that if we have a second here. I was referring more to, is there, with the RFID and what you're seeing in industry, are you seeing where you're seeing multi-tool systems where they're all working together? So you have your RFID, you have your visual, you have your other types of systems that are managing production, productivity, and all those things together. Are you seeing it where they're wrapping them together, or are they all pretty much still standalone and you need to piece them together?
I think, unfortunately, it does seem like the asset management side of it seems, I don't know, maybe, Norman and you guys are more experts on like ERP and your shop floor. Obviously, supply chain during COVID was a huge deal, right? But I truly think asset management fits in perfectly, with your shop floor, your supply chain, your ERP, back to your manufacturing, just collecting that data and feeding it up. I just haven't seen a lot of good integration. I like Oracle and SAP. They don't really have good asset management kind of capability. And then the challenge too, Roger, is one of the big things in our asset management software is we have to integrate and communicate to these readers. So and like I said, we're getting this crude oil effect. We're getting all this fire hose of data. So we got to have this middleware, and even within the reader, we can filter out. If I'm reading 1,000 reads a second and I got like multiple parts coming, I have to be able to filter out that data. And I also have to communicate and integrate with all these different readers, maybe from different manufacturers and standards. So it seems like the asset management is this standalone, but it does integrate to other software systems. And but I think it's a key part. And we have a lot of, I think more and more, we come in and start talking about a variety of different applications, but asset management, asset tracking is very high on people's lists now. And maybe they're hearing good success stories of companies that are implementing this and the technology gets better. I think there's a good ROI there when they really look at the wasted hours. What does it cost you to replace a part and all that? So I'd like to see it all bundled together, and maybe it will in the future.
Great. All right. If there are no other questions, we are just about at time. Gary, thank you so much again for presenting. Very
Yeah,
fascinating, exciting things going on. For everyone else, appreciate you making time to join us today. We meet once a month, the first Wednesday of the month. So our next meeting will be May 1st, and we'll be getting the details out regarding that topic and the guest speaker. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day and week.